What's up, folks? Anthony Armstrong here, former NFL receiver and host of Believe in Commanders. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. It's a league specifically created for combo projections that includes two or more players from different sports or leagues. Now, if you need help making those selections, you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Now, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on daily fantasy sports. You pick two or more players, choose more or less in whatever statistical category, and then you rack in the winnings up to 25x on your cash on your DFS picks. Make your way over to prizepicks.com/believe and use the code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a first deposit match up to $100. You must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to the Gegenpressing podcast. This is the bonus show, and Manu and I are delighted today to welcome a very special guest. He's the author of numerous books, and I don't think I've gone above and beyond Manu by saying he's probably the most, at least in the English-speaking world, the most prolific, the most influential author of German football literature and historical books. To rhyme off some, Tor, The Story of German Football, which is a very influential book for me. There's, of course, Who Invented the Bicycle Kick, Bayern, Creating the Global Super Club, Building Yellow Wall, and, of course, most recently, The Three Lives of the Kaiser, a biography of Franz Beckenbauer. Uli Hesse is here to join us. Uli, how are you?
I'm fine, but are you talking about me? God,
I'm afraid so.
That's way too much praise, but it sounds good. Thank you.
Manu, it's great to have Uli on the show. Unfortunately, the circumstances are not the cheeriest. We're, of course, here to talk about Franz Beckenbauer, who unfortunately passed away last week at the age of 78. I think it's probably a fair thing to say that, I think I described him in one of our recent podcasts as one of the founding fathers of modern German football. And it's just great to have Uli on the show. But Mario, I'll let you jump in because I know you haven't said anything yet. So hello to you, and let you say hello to everyone else.
Well, yeah, first of all, I'm delighted to have Uli on. This is the first time our paths crossed, which is strange considering the work in German football I've done in the English language. So thank you so much for coming on, Uli. I really appreciate it. I'm really, really curious to talk to you about Franz Beckenbauer today because I think everyone has such a different perspective on Franz Beckenbauer, the person. I tried to give my perspective in an article I did on Gegenpressing last week. Again, mostly based on my personal memories, which are different than, maybe people from a different generation. I grew up in a time when he was a manager, right? I didn't see him play. I was simply too young. But I'm really curious to hear someone else's perspective today. And obviously you've written a very good book about this. So yeah, welcome to the show, Uli.
Well, thank you. But it's my pleasure, actually. You're an 1860 fan, are you? I hear.
Yeah, I grew up in Munich. I now live in North America, where I run Transfermarkt's North America operations. Stefan is in the UK, doing it there for Transfermarkt. So, I live in Canada now, but I was born and raised in Munich, and my family are 1860 fans, so I didn't have much of a choice. One of the stories that you, of course, grew up with as an 1860 fan is that Franz Beckenbauer was supposed to play for 1860 until that famous Watschen von Giesing put a change to that legacy. And maybe we could start there. because I think it is quite important to point out that Franz Beckenbauer grew up in a Munich where Bayern Munich's dominance wasn't maybe set in stone as much as it is today, right? The balance of power was a little different in the 50s and early 60s. So maybe start with there. How did Franz Beckenbauer going to 1860 really change the power dynamics? Going to Bayern Munich rather than 1860 change the power dynamics of German football, Uli?
Yeah, you probably have to say he probably changed the entire course of German football, at least German club football. Maybe even the national team's football, because Bayern and Gladbach came to dominate, the Bundesliga and the national team, and both had this golden generation of players, which, when you think about it, is really strange. That both clubs almost at the same time had this core of homegrown players who would then, form the core of the national team. And, well, of course, with Beckenbauer in 1860, it would have been very different. I don't know if you've seen the Bayern game against Hoffenheim, when the game was basically dedicated to the memory of Franz Beckenbauer, and Sepp Maier was there.
Yeah.
And then they asked him, what should we do? Should we rename the ground after Beckenbauer? What should we do? And Maier replied that he felt Beckenbauer wouldn't want anything like that. Contrary to some people's opinion, he was not one to hog the limelight. But Maier said, we should put Beckenbauer's statue right next to that of Gerd Müller, because then, if my time comes, we could put my statue there, so we'd have the famous Maier, Beckenbauer, Müller axis back together, which defined Bayern and, to a degree, with the West German national team. So everything would have been different.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, man, on you go.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that Beckenbauer once said he doesn't want to have a statue of himself because that would be something the dogs would piss against.
That's a very Beckenbauer thing to say. Actually, Manny, why are we here? Why are we talking about it? Just amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe, just maybe, I can put a terrible burden off your shoulder. Because if you know this story about Beckenbauer and the slap in the face by this 1860 player, if people out there don't know the story, although his older brother was playing for Bayern Munich, or went to play for Bayern schoolboys, Beckenbauer played for a small club in Munich, and his dream was playing for 1860 because he was an 1860 fan. Having grown up in Giesing, which is 1860 country, as you will know. So that's the story. Until a tournament in 1958, when his team was up against 1860, and the story goes that he received a slap in the face by one of the 1860 players, and then decided on the spot that, no, I'm not going to join 1860. I'm going to join Bayern instead. Right, so this is a story we all have heard 100 times, and I have repeated it in some of my books. And I've always wondered about the story. For one, because since then, 3 different people have stepped forward and said they were the ones who hit Beckenbauer in the face. So that's kind of strange. So not at the same time, of course. I mean, everybody waited until the previous supposed culprit was dead, and then he stepped forward. And that was a bit of a strange part of the story, which always bothered me. Now, as you mentioned, I did this biography of Beckenbauer, and you'll be surprised to learn that I did some research. So some people do that before they write books, and I learned that until very recently, it was not quite well known that there was a very strong connection between the Bayern Munich youth setup and Franz Beckenbauer, because his first coach had an uncle who was in charge of the schoolboy division at Bayern Munich. So I've heard people say, some Bayern historians say, that maybe, just maybe, it was already a done deal that Franz and also the rest of his very good his very good schoolboys team, because the club were folding the youth football division. So there was already a done deal that Franz and his friends would join Bayern, and that this slap in the face, well, either came as a very welcome excuse, or maybe never happened at all. We just don't know. In my book, in the Beckenbauer biography, I make the quip that I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of his teammates who gave him the slap around the face, because he was a bit of a handful as a young person, as a boy. He could be, when arrogant is the wrong word, but he was hard to handle.
He himself has spoken of the slap, though, as well, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, the story originates with him. He always used to tell it as an explanation for why he, as an 1816 fan, as a boy from Giesing, went to Bayern. Who were really, I think he also said at one point that they came from Schwabing, which was a part of city that he'd never been to. Which of course is also part of the Beckenbauer myth, because, like I said, his brother played for Bayern, for Bayern schoolboys. So it was not as if the Reds were totally alien to him.
Maybe a well-placed excuse.
It's with Beckenbauer. It's always terribly difficult to differentiate, to draw the line between the myth and a joke. He was a great jokester, and the truth. It's one of the running gags in my Beckenbauer biography is that all the autobiographies he has supposedly written were all ghostwritten,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure how many of them he actually read from cover to cover.
Can I just jump in momentarily, because I want to ask about, before we maybe move on to other things, maybe still, while we're still on that topic of 1860 and him joining Bayern as a young player, really a lot of international fans who maybe aren't steeped in, the lore and the history of German football would struggle to understand that the Bayern Munich that he joined was not the super club that they are today. While, your Manchester United or your Barcelonas or Real Madrids have been, Juventus, other clubs have been super clubs for 100 years. The Bayern that Beckenbauer joined was a team that had to win promotion, and that to me seems like the most magical thing about his legacy is the fact that he, along with so many other players, joined this club as youth. It seems something that just simply couldn't happen nowadays, where you have this kind of intake of young players, and they not literally, but they take a club from almost nothing to the best team in European football. I'd love to just get your opinion on that, really.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.